baby has to die? Why should this baby die? Why should the baby die? Sitting here tonight is Tim Bianchi. Tim was the father of that baby. His girlfriend chose an abortion. And in the later hours of that day, Tim, that child died?
Yes. The rescue was unsuccessful, and there was no way to save my child.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the issue of the rights of the father of the child. Tim had indicated to his girlfriend that he would be willing to provide for the child, even if she didn't want the custody of the child. He would provide that. He would provide the means for care and custody. And yet, on the altar of the abortion industry, another little life was snuffed out. We're going to talk about this tonight. Sometimes you don't know what to say. Sometimes you ache inside. Sometimes you want to cry. Sometimes you want to get up on top of the highest building and scream out to a city or a state or a country, wake up and realize what you're doing to God's little children. Children that are a creation of God. But no, somebody says, I have a right over my own body. And the bell tolls on. Our telephone number tonight, your comments, please. Our telephone number is 935-3030 or 1-800-733-8830. We'd like to hear from you, your comments, your reactions, your input, as once again you have watched the abortion process. You've heard about the unborn that have been rescued, and there are some exciting and wonderful reports. But there are also the reports of failures at rescue. And tonight you've seen one of those. What would you like to talk about? Our lines are literally jammed at this moment. And we're going to take your calls as we move along. We're going to talk with John in Milwaukee. John, your thoughts?
Yes, I was watching the abortion thing there. And to me, I think it's totally disgusting. And as far as that young man with his fiancée, I think that was totally wrong. You know, here's the man that's willing to take care of the child, you know, but what gives the woman the right to go in and kill this man's baby? Now, if she would have had that child, the only right he would have had then was to support that child. The state would have made darn sure of that. How come they couldn't make darn sure that he would have had the right as a father to have his baby? Thank you.
Thank you, John. We're going to go to Mary in Milwaukee. Go ahead, Mary.
Yes, I'd like to ask this gentleman what type of birth control he was using, and
ma'am,
he wasn't using any. I'd like to know why, and that's my comment.
Okay, ma'am, we're not discussing that aspect. We're talking about abortion tonight, and so if you have a personal question, you want to talk to him about that, we'll give you a point of contact later. Mike in New Berlin, you're on the air.
Hello. Two things. One is it's about time that the father's rights start coming out, because that's been totally overlooked in this for a long time now. The other point I have is in today's news, a man literally punched his wife or ex-wife in the stomach to the point of killing the baby.
That's right.
They've watered the laws down so badly that it wasn't even a murder.
Sir, let me just go one step further. Today I received in the mail a letter of disgust from someone in the healthcare industry who's a nurse. Documentation of do-it-yourself abortion procedures that are downright disgusting. Training courses where women learn how to abort their own children. What a way to shake your fist in the face of God. Thank you, sir. Line 4, Margaret, you're on the air.
Yes, I think it's a shame that they will arrest the people who was there at the abortion clinic when it should be the other way around. See, today, it's just such an evil time we're living in, where everything that's wrong is right, and when something is right, it's wrong today, but this shouldn't even be. You know, I think if a man wanted to be responsible for the child, they ought to be able to take care of the child. The woman ought to bring forth the child since she was laying there and she had her good time. Now she should be unselfish and bring the child forth. And if she don't want it, give it to the father or give it to somebody else who will take good care of the child. That's what I believe.
Thank you, Margaret. We're going to go to line 5. We're talking to Dwayne in Milwaukee. Dwayne, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening.
Yes, sir.
My comment is, why do people have to push their beliefs upon other people? I mean, everybody's right, has a freedom of choice, and how are you just gonna say, you have to do this, you're gonna save your child? You know, why can't people decide for themselves? Why do you have to push it on them?
Sir, let me just interrupt you right now. Nobody is talking about those who decide for themselves. We're talking about the people who are deciding for others.
Right, but...
Yeah, and we're talking about the mother who decides for the child. And you see, the mother can decide for herself all she wants to. But the mother is deciding for two human beings. And that's the issue where the child's literal civil rights have been challenged. I'm sorry, I guess he ran out of answers or something. Dan, you're on the air.
Oh, first of all, I'd like to commend the gentleman for standing up for the unborn. Second of all, I'd like to ask him a two-part question. Do you still love her, that you want to marry her, or has your respect for her changed as far as marriage to her?
It's a heavy question.
Yes, I still love her. As far as the marriage goes, right now we are getting along in a friendship relationship. We have a lot of things to work out, and there are a lot of hurdles for us to go to get over, just to get through the next few months. How our relationship will go is up in the air, and there are a lot of things that will have to be worked out, and opinions will probably have to be changed.
I realize that...
20 years of marriage. I will say one thing to the gentleman, that on an issue like abortion, which is one that goes right to the soul of a person, I hope that he deeply thinks and researches the Bible with his girlfriend. And I think Vic can agree with me on that.
Yes.
Thank you, Sarah, for standing up for what you felt was right. Even though I am not going to place any judgment on how the baby or fetus was arrived at, how the conception was. Thank you. Thank
you, sir. Again, I want to say this tonight. Our discussion of the matter is dealing with the aspect of the value of a human life. And I said at the beginning of the program, regardless of the means of conception, tonight we're not talking about the conception of children out of wedlock. We are not endorsing, and I will be very, very clear with you that as a station and as a ministry, we firmly believe that marriage, within the bonds of marriage, is the only right place for sexual relationships. I speak on behalf of the station. However, tonight, I want to emphasize that in our view, two wrongs never made a right. And if a child has been conceived, you do not destroy the innocent child because of the error of an adult. You do not destroy an innocent child simply on the altar of convenience. And you see, this is the garbage pail kids mentality of our society today, that a child is a disposable commodity. If it's inconvenient, if it is a creature that is in the way, if it is one that is unloved or uncared for, then kill it. But folks, the issue we're talking about tonight is the value of a human life, and the issue of if a child is conceived, even out of wedlock, and the father of that child says, look, I will fulfill my responsibilities, I will take charge, I will provide the needs for that child, which obviously is probably one of the big excuses for abortion these days, because somebody says it's an unwanted child. Well, in this particular case, the child was promised care. The child was promised keeping. The child was promised to have its needs supplied. But instead, the issue of abortion being a choice became the final chapter. And tonight we're talking about this issue because A woman may say she has the right over her body, and nobody is really arguing that point. My question is, do you feel that she has the right over the body of the child? That's the question we've got to talk about. We're going to go to those phone lines which are literally jammed to the wall, and Greg in Milwaukee, are on the air.
Yes, I have quite a few points to state.
Well, we'll give you 2 or 3.
Right. First of all, I'd like to say real quick that I think the police did an exemplary job at controlling the scene and treating with everybody with respect from what I've seen.
Yes, I think they behaved in a very dignified manner. I didn't hear any complaints. Did you, Marilyn?
Okay. And also, I guess the thing is, I work in the ghetto of Milwaukee.
Are you a police officer, sir?
No, I work at a private ambulance company.
Okay.
And I think I have just as much reason to state with certainty of my opinions, perhaps even more so than you, in that I respond to these houses. Last call we had the other day, 21-year-old female, 5 months pregnant with her 8th child. No job. She's on Title 19. The house, as in most houses, were just filthy, cockroach-ridden, no food. The children were malnourished, not cared for. And I dare anybody to state with certainty that they would adopt these people. In fact, the adoption centers, I believe, are so filled with people, children waiting to be adopted. Let me ask you and that gentleman who wanted his child, I can see his side. However, have you or that gentleman adopted a person?
First of all, to answer your question, let me ask where you get your statistics that the adoption agencies are filled with children waiting to be adopted.
Okay, let me just...
No, I'm pinning you down now. You're a man that's responsible, and I believe you.
Okay.
But please tell me now, how do you get this information that the adoption agencies are filled to capacity?
Let me rephrase that. There are children, I retract that statement.
Okay.
There are children waiting to be adopted. Now,
not very many.
Most people want little infants and little babies. And this is from media reports and Reader's Digest and who knows what else. Mm-hmm. But most people do not want the 10, 12-year-olds. You know, and the people that I see picketing, that's all well and good, but that does not lessen anything. I want to know how many people, the only people that I will acknowledge to picket are the people that have adopted. They are the ones, it's so easy to pick up a sign and say, oh, do this. Well, I'm not going to do it.
Well, my friend, let me interrupt you just long enough to say this, and I certainly will give you a chance to come back again. I appreciate the fact that you're willing to have exchange here. Number one, we have had numerous programs on this show with adoption agencies that have people waiting up to 2 and 3 years for a child to adopt. Also, the adoption agencies have indicated that not only are they looking for little infants, but there are those who are willing to take them at older years. And so I think one of the things you must include, at least from this point on, is that organizations such as the Evangelical Child and Family Agency are very much active in providing health care, financial care, residency, clothing, everything that is needed to carry a mother through pregnancy and to provide those adoption services if they are willing to accept them. So, and I appreciate you being willing to retract that statement, and I didn't mean to be unkind, but you have said on the air tonight, and I concur with you, that much of the information that you've gotten has been from the media. The media, by the way, I have to ask the question, which media? Because there's a very heavy bend to secular media as to the ominous aspect of the pro-life people and the poor, persecuted aspect of the pro-choice people. I've heard people talking about these pro-lifers that have run an attack on the abortion clinics. They allege violence. They allege all sorts of misdemeanor and misbehaving. And may I say this, I went to Wichita, sir. I went looking for this violence. We took my television camera, we took our recorders, we took a camera crew, and we didn't find that. We found people who were praying, who were very passive, who were praying that God would somehow intervene in the minds and the hearts of people to have some compassion for children. Granted, you are right. There are some people who treat their kids worse than dogs and cats. And frankly, I think that's child abuse. I really do. I think that unfit parenthood and where people continue to go on having children out of wedlock, 8 children by the time that the woman is in her middle 20s, that's a disgrace. But you see, I think one of the things that adds to that disgrace is the treatment of our society where aid-dependent children has been the welfare ticket to people who have come into our state. I saw a cartoon in a recent Milwaukee journal. A new cartoonist has just come to the city, and he showed a Chicago bus headed for Milwaukee. And the Milwaukee ticket to Milwaukee was an AFDC check from Milwaukee County.
Right.
And I think that is so accurate. It's been long overdue that somebody really addressed the issue.
Yeah.
And some people are being paid, given financial help and encouragement to have children out of wedlock. Now that's as wrong, and I agree with you 100%. But I have to come back to this point, sir, that what we're talking about tonight is not an area where a child was not cared for. And I don't think we dare paint the whole picture with one broad brush. When there is, and we're talking about one case and a story tonight that is different. And when this man stood right there and told the police officers, I will provide, I will care for the child. You see, if this man did not provide for the child after it was born, then the legal process would go after him for child support.
Is he in a financial position to do so?
I'm not here looking at his bank statement,
well,
but the man is obviously clothed and dressed and in his right mind and does not look undernourished, and I can only believe that he's capable of providing what he said he will.
So you're saying that his wishes are greater than the woman's wish?
No, his wishes are equal. I'll say that. His wishes are equal. And as long as there's a plus and a minus, guess what?
The man always loses. See, and I understand that because I had a similar instance with that sort of thing, not abortion, but the woman decided to leave type of thing.
Well, we're sticking with the subject of abortion tonight. And, sir, I thank you for your exchange. And though you and I may not agree, I think we have to refocus our attention on the case tonight, not on all the cases of disrespect and lack of care and abused children. Tonight we're talking about a case where a child would have had support, but ended up being killed. And I think that's the item of our focus tonight. I thank you for calling.
I wish him well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Let's go to number 2, Steve in Milwaukee. You're on the air.
Yeah, Vic, I'd just like to say I really appreciate the work that you do day in, day out. I listen to you on the radio. I'm in sales and appreciate the work bringing this to the forefront. My niece had a child. He's the sweetest little child. We were really blessed to have him. She had this child out of wedlock, and I thank the Lord every day that she had this child because he is a true testimony that God does exist in the person of Jesus Christ. It's a shame that people cannot recognize that every child that the world brings about is a gift from God, that possibly many of these people that are being murdered day in and day out could bring about a great deal of good in the world today. We look at the Dahmer trial. The murders that he committed are probably on the same level of what happens to these little children when they're murdered in the womb. And I just pray to the Lord that many of these little children could come about in the world and bring a lot of good to be a testimony that Jesus does exist and live through us. Thanks, Vic.
Thank you for your call, sir. Line number 3, Doug in Kenosha.
Yes, hi, Vic.
Yes, sir.
I think it's deplorable that a father can't get a hearing when a baby is to be aborted, and there's no chance and no consultation at all. The mother can just go ahead and do this, and neither do the grandparents. In some cases where the child is younger, the girl's young, They have no say either. A girl can go get an abortion any day she wants to, even if she's a minor. And I think it was interesting how the police managed to get in front of the cameras. They must want to hide something, you know. They must have enough conscience to recognize that there's something to be hidden.
That amazed me as I watched them very skillfully stand in front of the cameras, especially at the opportune moment.
Right when the arrests were being made, right when there might have been cuffs being put on or people dragged around. I think we're in a sad shape here, and I think we're getting close to Nazi Germany, really. And what they were doing, the people that did that were criminals. And yet we could do it in this country, and we have no criminal penalty for that.
I thank you for your call, sir.
Thank you.
Line number 4, Mildred in Milwaukee. Go ahead.
Hello. I was thinking about the families. The families have completely fallen apart. The children are not getting the right training in the homes. Consequently, they come up, they feel that they're free to do whatever they choose. They have no morals. And this is going to be that way as long as the people continue to stray away from good home training and church training about God, to give people an understanding of what is sin and what is not. We've always known that to kill is a sin. And if you take a seed and put it in the ground and pour boiling water on it, it's going to die. And if you leave it alone, eventually it'll come up to whatever that seed was going to be, if you'll nurture it. And the same thing as when a woman conceives, if she leaves it alone, she will bring forth a child, as the Bible says. This is the way we were taught. And if they kill it, if they don't bring it forth, if they do something to destroy it, they have committed murder. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Mary Lynn, I'm going to come back to you for a comment, and also to Tim, and then we're going to go back to our calls. Any thoughts?
Basically, it is something that is very sad, and I believe that it is because we have left God in our nation, that we have all these problems, and it starts with one problem, one sin, and to cover up that sin, we have to have another sin and another sin. And you had mentioned earlier this evening that you just really want to tell the people in the church to wake up. You know, it's very devastating to watch these children die day in and day out, and it must have been very devastating for Tim to watch his child walk in there. And it's very devastating, and I would want the church to step out and look at these victims. Then they will have the proper response to want to protect them when they see the victim. It's very sad to watch the children die.
Tim, your thoughts?
Yeah. The one man mentioned these being as bad as the crimes Jeffrey Dahmer committed. Well, with abortion, it's done every day, again and again, and it's done for profit, for money for the abortionists. They're the ones who profit from all this.
They can't even plead insanity.
No. It is along the lines of Nazi Germany, where when the Jews were killed, they pulled their golden teeth and cut their hair off to make wigs, to make a profit. And these children are murdered for cash.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pick up some more calls. I might say this, that at this table, it was a privilege to visit some years ago with a mother, actually, who indicated to us that she had conceived as a result of rape. Now, oftentimes you'll hear comments coming from people saying, well, rape or incest is the only reason, but that is a viable reason to have an abortion. I question that, because that mother was violently raped in an underpass in a South Side park. She had every reason to brush the horrors of that memory out of her mind, but you see, conception occurred in her body, but she did not go and abort the child. It wasn't the child's fault. But she carried the child to term and then placed it up for adoption. As we sat and talked that evening, she looked at me with tears in her eyes and she said, I'm so glad that I didn't abort my child. She is celebrating her 26th birthday. And she showed us a lovely picture of this young woman. Now, folks, the penalty for our wrongdoings as individuals is one thing. But are you going to penalize the child? You're going to kill the child? You see, The idea of covering up with murder is nothing new. Cain and Abel, the first murder that occurred, Cain wanted his own way. And he was displeased with God because of God not receiving his sacrifice. And Cain killed his brother Abel. And Abel's blood cried out from the ground. But it wasn't hidden from God. And there was a terrible price to pay. Well, tonight as we look in terms of the many little broken, bleeding bodies that have been put together in fragments, in plastic bags, and taken to pet cemeteries and flushed down garbage disposal units, yes, right here in our city. All of the practices used to cover up, to hide the dastardly deeds of abortion. And the question is, how long will God put up with it? Man's tolerance may become calloused, but may I say this, God's wrath is not calloused. It's as hot and fiery today as it ever was. And God's payday may not always come on Friday, but may I say that for those who disregard God's commands and God's gift of life, you will find that there's an awful price to pay. We've seen it. We've seen it right here in our own city, as some who have been involved in the abortion industry have suffered physical pain and physical anguish. We've seen areas where, in other cities, abortionists have lost their wives because of divorce or disharmony in the family over the dastardly product of abortion. We have found in other cities where practices have gone bankrupt. We've found where tremendous prices are paid for making that hot buck, the paid-in-cash delivery of death available at the door of an abortion clinic. No, folks, we're not going to go away. We're going to keep talking about it. And we're going to let you talk about it. We have just a few moments remaining, and we're going to pick up our phones. Line 8, Rosie, you're on the air.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I really respect the right of the father there in wanting to keep the baby. But the last alternative is the mother, really. And the reason I said that is simply because she is the one that has to bear the pain. And she is the one that has to bore that child. And I think that should be her last right.
Ma'am, let me ask you a question before we go further. There's pain in abortion, too.
Yes, I agree.
There's pain and anguish as emotional scars are made in an abortion. So are we kidding ourselves that just because another method of removing a body from the mother's womb is used, that there's anything different?
No, I wouldn't say we are kidding ourselves, but the thing is, I think we are forgetting the rights of the woman, the mother.
Ma'am, I'm going to argue with you, okay? Can I argue with you for a minute?
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you honestly tell me, ma'am, and you sound like an intelligent and a very sensitive lady, but can you tell me honestly that the end justifies the means? Can you really say that?
And I understand where you're coming from, but I'm still sticking to my point where I said that the last right, the last decision should be that of the mother. Now, here you have a case where he's not even married to her. Now, let's say that she made a decision and said, well, yes, I'll keep the baby because you want to keep the baby. He just may walk out on her at any time. And there she is left with that responsibility.
Ma'am, was she left with a responsibility, or was she a partner in that responsibility? Because you see, a man by himself can't have a baby.
Yes, but if he walks away, he's no longer a partner in that responsibility.
But you're covering ground that isn't the case here.
Well, that's my opinion of it. That's the way I feel about it.
And you're entitled to your opinion.
Thank you.
What about the right of the child to live and have a happy and free life?
That doesn't count, Tim. Children don't have that right.
Apparently that's the way a lot of Americans feel today.
We're going to pick up a couple more calls if we have the time. We're going to go to line number 7. You're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, Brian.
Yes, how old was the child when she died?
Well, the child hadn't been born. It was killed
about 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
Okay, well, I agree with him because, he offered a home. He offered a life for the child. what was her reason for getting an abortion?
I don't know her exact reason. What she told me was, number one, she didn't like children. Number two, she didn't want to be pregnant, and she didn't want to end up tied down.
Well, if you offered it, then was that her only reason? Because I don't really understand what she was trying to say there. I know she didn't like it, but you offered to take care of it. You wanted the child.
Well, like I said, I don't know what exactly was going through her head. I only know what she told me. I did offer to take this child. She wouldn't have to work during the pregnancy. I would support her. I was able to do that, not in a style where she'd be able to ride around in a BMW, but she'd be able to eat, and she'd be warm, and she'd have a place to live, and clothes on her back, and I would be able to support the child. She didn't want to have a baby.
Thank you very much, Brian. We're going to go to line number 6, is that? Line number 5. You're on the air. Carolyn, go ahead.
Yes, it's hard to say what a woman should do, but when a woman is pregnant, it's a really scary feeling. And I know I was pregnant and I had an abortion. And it's more fear than anything of having that baby. So if you can't support it, you know nobody who can. I don't know what to say, but it's better to have an abortion than bring up an unwanted child.
Let me ask you this, my friend. If, in this case, there was somebody that wanted it, and it was killed anyway, how do you feel about that?
If. That's a big word. If.
If what, ma'am?
If there was a person.
There was.
That you could.
There was.
trust.
Yeah, this man right here said that he would have been willing to take the child, but instead it was killed anyway.
You don't know that for a fact. You don't know he would be a good father.
Well, and I guess you don't know who's going to make a good mother either, do you?
No. And if the child is unwanted, we have enough children around that aren't taken care of right now.
Ma'am, there are people lined up that have to wait 3 to 5 years to adopt a child. They're paying $10,000 for the privilege of adopting a child. And they're having to wait 3 to 5 years and still have to wait. Some have waited longer. And tonight, I will not disagree that there are some that have been abused and some that are in need of care. But tonight, my question is this, to our viewers and to everyone listening and watching tonight. Is it a cheap gamble to say, well, if it's a question, then let's kill the child? Folks, that's one question. That seems rather cheap. Life is cheap today. Garbage pail kids. Who's the next child that'll be disposed of? Thanks for joining us tonight on In Focus.